Okay,
Hello,
should I
Mr.
start?
Heyman. Thank you for coming and joining us tonight. What makes cyber attacks so deadly, in your opinion?
Cyber attack philosophy is a very ancient military strategy. Goes back to the time when they used to make the star fort, and you had a range of maybe 10,000 feet that the interior military had to protect. But the attackers only had to find one spot. The hackers today are the same situation. You have to protect every facet of your business, which would be miles and miles, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of information. And all they have to find is one chink in your armor, and they're in. And it's very easy for them because they can pick and choose their shots anytime they want, where you have to be vigilant 24 and 7. And
So
just a
like
slight mistake opens them up.
so like armor on a knight, if an arrow got in between the shield, he was dead.
Correct.
That's a good analogy.
and
Interesting.
and when it goes back to the concept of the fort was the most modern technology that was created. The famous Star Fort up in Newfoundland actually shows a counter activity so that every prong of the star covered every other prong of the business. Well,
Why
when you're in cybersecurity, you're in the same situation, but
why
it's
haven't
impossible
people
to cover
built
all factors
hmm, why haven't
because
people
nobody
built for
reads.
cybersecurity when they build these products? How come they don't take it in mind?
Nobody reads. They look at the opening that they're trying to cover and they cover it, but the user still has the problem of all other aspects. And you have the human element. It's always the human element. Whether it was the Star Force or whatever, you have the human element that opens up an email, makes a mistake, gets an email, and now they're getting very sophisticated. They're combining emails with voicemail and coordination. And, it's really fascinating. They stole all the information from Dell Repair. And they would call up and tell you about your computers, and they would tell you about which computers you
That's
had
true. That's
and what
true.
service problems you had. And you really would believe them. The
Mm-hmm.
trick is never to respond to a call coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Always say,
Call
I'll
them
call you
back.
back.
Call them back.
And then you call them back and verify that the connection is actually to the manufacturer.
So,
Never take a phone call.
so
That's a hack.
is the answer training? Most people jump into a computer without training.
The answer is always training and awareness.
Mm-hmm.
This is a 24 and 7 situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like the ancient military. You got to be on guard all the time.
On guard all the
You never
time.
know when a barbarian, a hacker, is going to come in. And he picks the time, Friday afternoon when you're busy. He picks the holidays. These people sit around in big boardrooms and talk about the best way to break in,
True.
just like we sit around and talk about the best way to prevent them from breaking in.
Are
And
most
they
of the
have a lot
attacks
to make.
coming? Are most of the attacks coming from India, or what countries that you know of?
Um, Traditionally, if it's coming from Russia, it's coming for money. If it's coming from China, it's coming from intellectual properties.
Good point.
Then there's a whole series of everything else because you can buy hacking software on the dark web, and the access for everybody to do this is the ability to make money and not get caught. So you got to be very on target. You got to remind your people on a constant basis. You got to be on your toes on a regular basis. You got to be vigilant as a military person.
What if you can't afford it?
Being vigilant as a military person is very simple. You talk to your people every day, tell them be careful. You set the stage. That's conversation. That's nothing to do with anything that costs money.
A lot of leaders don't know
95,
technology, so they don't
95%,
talk about it.
95% of all hacks come in through the human being.
Yes, the untrained person.
Correct.
But so much management don't understand cybersecurity awareness or security, so they don't pass it on.
Those are the ones who get hacked the easiest.
Yeah,
And then
good
they
point.
learn the hard way.
Good point. Alan, tell us what you do in your business.
I work with people on compliance. The whole aspect of cybersecurity has moved away from technology into documentation and compliance because the government has only one way to control the public, and that's through paperwork. And I'm a specialist in compliance and paperwork, adhering to the different laws.
So we're in the computer field. We need a lot of paperwork to operate.
Absolutely. The recent one that was scary is that the Board of Education in New York State was not subject to any kind of rules and regulations. And then in January of 2022, they went ahead and passed a ruling that was about 90 pages thick, making the New York State people adherent to major laws, major NIST laws, major responsibilities, taking third-party people, making them responsible, making sure that variations on reports and how they do it are posted on the web. This is a documentation situation. That concept of the documentation, interestingly enough, goes back to the 1870s when you had the railroads, and they couldn't put people out to protect the railroads. So what they did was they set documentation. And when there was an accident, they did an investigation. And you couldn't deny there was an accident. So they got you, and that's when they levied the heavy fines. You know what? I didn't have the accident. Of course you had the accident. They were doing the same thing in every form of government. They set up the rules and regulations, and when you report that you had a hack, that's when the fines come into play.
So when you report and you had a hack, I assume you need insurance for reporting this stuff or to cover yourself?
You should have insurance because the hack opens up a whole door of responsibility that you should have had and could have had. And insurance covers the expenses involved. But as top of that, you got to have the right kind of documentation that the state wants in order to satisfy their requirements. And they've gone from safety of security that required just things like license number and name and telephone number and social security, that you had to protect that. Now they're at the point where the sense of security is such that any kind of documentation that can identify an individual down to a comic book that has an address on it is a subject to this kind of ruling.
Really? Okay.
And it covers all people in the world. It's not where you do your work, it's where your customers are based.
Okay.
California is doing the same thing, and other states are following.
So if you have customers in Oakland, you have to follow Oakland law because the people are from that region.
Correct. And the paperwork in New York State has started off where everybody thought the fines were going to be away this year, when the first 3 fines that came through in January totaled $6.5 million.
Wow. $6.5 million. Wow. I also saw Caribbean Cruise Line just got hacked. I mean, got fined millions of dollars for not protecting their data correctly. Another example.
They're going after the big guys first because they have the deep pockets. But what they do for the small guy is they have computerized the fines. So that if you have a license, you have to get your license renewed, and then you have to have all your documentation in place, and they match you up through the computer, the documentation in place with the fines in place. And if it doesn't match out, a $5,000 fine goes out automatically.
Wow.
And then try and fight a computer that you didn't have the right documentation.
Wow. All right, Alan. Well, thanks for jumping in, and we look forward to hearing about more of your understanding of this in the near future. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Thank you.